Getting great data is only the first step. After that, you need to make a great plot in order to tell the story. Let me show you how to do that using the Plotly Chart Studio software. First, go to the correct URL. Next, we need to click Sign In. This window has the option to either sign in or to sign up. In addition to entering your username and password, you can also use a social media login such as Facebook or Google. Once you're logged in, you can see your username in the top right-hand corner. Click on My Files. Click New on the left-hand side to start creating a new chart and a new data set. So this is the main Plotly window. It has a variety of parts. On the far left, we see a row of tabs: Structure, Theme, Style, Annotate, Analyze, Export, and JSON, as well as the Save button. On the far right, we have the spreadsheet, which allows us to enter our data values, and in the bottom right, we of course have the large plot area. Let's start entering some data one by one. This works just like Excel or any other spreadsheet program. Once you've entered data, you can drag them around, copy and paste, whatever you need. Right now, instead of typing the rest of these out, I'm just going to copy and paste in some data that I have already. And now we can resize these columns and use this small drop-down to rename the header, which is the name of that row, from A and B to something more meaningful. Here I'm using force in newtons and distance in meters. Let's click the Trace button to now define a trace, which is like a single curve on our plot, remember? So we can set X as distance and Y as force. And you can see how nice it is, because with this method, we've named our variables. So we don't just associate X and Y with A and B. We can actually use distance and force names. So there's our plot. It's looking good, but now we need to start decorating it a little bit. Of primary importance is adding in the axis labels. This is super important, otherwise a person doesn't know what your axes represent. Now here comes a critical step. It's very important to save, to click that Save button on the far left as soon as you've finished entering your data and before you do any kind of curve fitting. We'll see a little bit later on that Plotly has a little bit of a special handling requirement here, a bit of a peculiarity, in that you cannot save your data for later retrieval on that My Files screen if you've added one of the advanced curve fitting features. We'll talk about the advanced and the basic one. So just to avoid any of those problems, guys, the best practice is to save your data as soon as you've inputted it and before you've added any curve fitting. So that's what we're going to do here. We can give a name for both the plot that we've created and the grid, which is their name for the spreadsheet of data. Click Save. And there we go. Now we have saved this data in the cloud. If I were to close this file right now and reopen it, everything you see on the screen would be able to come back, because that My Files page is kind of like a Plotly cloud storage, kind of like Google Drive. Next, let's add some curve fitting. Select the tab on the left-hand side, Curve Fitting, and then click the Fit button. Select Trace 0. And now we see the option for the basic and advanced curve fitting. For basic curve fitting, you can see there is a drop-down of choices, everything from linear to various polynomials, and even an exponential and Gaussian function. Click the Run button in order to do the curve fitting procedure. The advanced curve fitting allows you to type in a custom curve fitting function using the traditional calculator-like syntax shown here. This is really the fun of physics because we can now choose our physics equation that actually applies to the data. So in this particular case, I'm actually plotting Coulomb's law force data here, where we would expect an inverse square relationship between force and distance. So let me enter that function as a parameter a divided by x squared. A is the only unknown parameter, so we can see that updates. And now I can just click Run and do the fit. Much better. But it doesn't fit perfectly. We can enter a x min and x max to limit the range of our data, our x data, our domain, that is going to be used for the fitting. If we try 0.05 and hit Run, we don't see much difference, but if we use 0.1, now we see a big difference. So now we can see that the data fits really well from its far right value down to 0.1, and if we just only use that portion for our fitting, we get good agreement, but not in the higher part. This can be very useful when the data you've collected cannot be fully explained just by one fit function across the entire domain, and that's what's actually happening here. There's one more thing we need to do before we export our plot, and that is to change the font size. I've changed it here to a font size of 30 pixels, and that may look enormous on this screen, but you always have to remember that when you export your plot, it's going to be shrunk down into a report in vastly different dimensions. So you always want to make your font size large enough so that when this graph gets rasterized, turned into basically a grid of pixels and shrunk down, everything is still very readable. Okay, the last thing we need to do is go to the Export tab and click on Image. We're going to do a custom size, and these are the dimensions that I recommend: 1200 pixels by 800 pixels. The browser automatically downloads the image, and when we open it up, we see our final result. So that's how you make a high quality plot using the Plotly Chart Studio. Thanks for watching.